And we welcome you into another edition, a very special edition of the Ollie Reed Sports Podcast, giving you the latest news and notes around the world of high school and college basketball across the Mountain State and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you guys the first ever West Virginia Mountaineer RoundTable. Alongside me is my partner in crime and co-host of the Ollie Reed Sports Podcast, Mr. Jack Matheny. Alongside him is managing editor of WVSports.com, Mr. Keenan Cummings. Right below me, right over here is Mr. Luke Blaine, basketball beat reporter for WV Sports Now. Also, I have Luke. I already mentioned Luke. Bryce Cohen from the Daily Athenaeum, and also Nick Castrilli from the Daily Athenaeum, and also sports writer from WVSports.com. So, guys, welcome in. How are y'all doing tonight?
Good.
Doing good.
Oh, yeah. Doing good, man.
Can't complain.
Can't complain. Absolutely, man. We ready to talk some WVU basketball this year?
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. It's about that time. Again, I know we've been covering WVU football for a while. Obviously, we still got some season left, but WVU basketball is about to tip off here in about 6 days as they get set to prepare for Mount St. Mary's and for their season opener in year one of the Ross Hodge era. So first things first, I'm going to mention about the coaching hire and the coaching staff. I think they have done an incredible job getting these group of guys from the portal with Honor Huff, Trace and Eagle staff, Brennan Lorient, Jasper Floyd, Harlan Obioha, pretty much mentioned this projected starting five. Since we got to see this team in action last Sunday against Wheeling University in an 80-54 exhibition win. Talking about that, first things first, expectations on kind of the offense and defense. As of right now, personally, for me, obviously we already know Ross Hodge's system. Obviously, they're a very physical team on defense. Although I feel like they did play a little bit sloppy in that game against Wheeling. I just don't think they played like the best of their advantage since, it's an exhibition and they were playing against a Division II team, MEC sleeper in Wheeling. So it was a tough game for them. But obviously, we got to see that close scrimmage. We got to hear the news that they beat Maryland in that secret scrimmage with Honor Huff having 10 threes. So expectations on this team for me personally, I think for our non-conference opponents, I think we'll be able to be ready offensively. But this team definitely needs to get better defensively, physically, and I think they'll prove that this year. So, guys, thoughts on that? Expectations on the offense and defense this year?
Well, I guess I'll start. When you look at this team, to me, from what we heard about the close scrimmage, it's encouraging. When they shoot the ball, obviously they're gonna have a lot of success. But what I like to see, I know it's a Division II team and West Virginia had outsized them, but you got to be able to beat teams different ways. You're not gonna be able to make shots every game, especially once you get into the meat of the schedule. It's going to be a lot harder when you're going against guys with length and a lot of guys that can switch and make things difficult. You're not going to hit 10, 12 threes a night. It's just not the way this works every night. So I like that. I want to be able to see it in the non-conference schedule. I want to be able to see how they're able to work in the post, with Lorient and Obioha. I like that dynamic. I like the fact that they have multiple ways they can beat people. The thing I like the most about this team, though, top to bottom, is just the roster build. I really like what Ross Hodge can do with this team. They can go big if they want. I know everyone was concerned. Everyone's freaking out in the offseason. They only got one true big. But if you actually look at this roster and the way it's made up, they can go pretty big, positionally up and down the board. Or they can go small and put some guys in some different spots. I think the X factor, I guess we'll get into it later, but I'll go ahead and spoil it a little bit. The guy that I'm kind of excited for, we won't see him the first 5 games, but is Chance Moore, just because of the versatility he brings to this lineup. So overall, I agree with you, Ollie. I think he did a really good job kind of piecing this together with what he had. And it's going to be interesting, though. Every time you got guys making that jump, it's easy to put up 18 points a game at a lower level. It's easy to hit a lot of threes. Shooting translates, obviously, but it's a lot harder when you're going against a team like Houston or, Iowa State or some of these challenges. So I'm optimistic. I've been high on this team before the Maryland game. I thought that, they had a chance to be a lot better than kind of thought on paper. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. I was really impressed with Obi Oha. You heard about his transformation through the offseason. He's trying to lose weight, kind of get into a playing shape where he could guard out in the perimeter. I thought just his impact on the floor, and obviously Wheeling didn't have quite the size that some of these Big 12 teams will. But I thought it was a good sign that he was able to move the way he was moving against Wheeling. And when you add that pairing with if Honor Huff and Trace and Eaglestaff aren't going to have their best shooting nights, to have somebody down low to clean up and be able to put back dunks, put back layups, I think that's kind of ties in what Keenan said with the versatility. This team will be able to beat you in more ways than just one. If they're not having the best shooting night, they might be able to attack the paint. I think that's something that I'll certainly be able to look out for during the non-conference schedule. And then when you get into Big 12 play, you start to play some of those better 7-footers in the league in college basketball. I'm really excited to see how they react to that and kind of shift the game plan week by week, game by game.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Harlan because even though it was just the opponent they were playing, Wheeling, I thought he still moved well. And he had a really good game, and he used his size to his advantage. And if he can do that throughout, the rest of the season when we get into Big 12 play, that's a huge advantage that we have. And honestly, I wasn't too concerned with how we played against Wheeling. I just think that we were trying to play a bunch of different guys and run a lot of different sets. And I think Coach Hodge was just seeing what he had and what he can do.
Yeah, and what Bryce was saying about having Harlan being able to clean up down low, Brennan being able to clean up down low. This is a team that's going to want to shoot the ball a lot. And like we saw, the shots weren't falling, but you look at Harlan, 8 rebounds, half of them were on the offensive side. So just having someone being able to be under the rim, ready for – it seems like he's ready. They're going to shoot the ball. Huff, Eaglestaff, they're going to let it fly. So having someone down there ready to go, grab that rebound is a plus when the team's struggling to shoot.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of go off of all that, I think height, like a lot of us touched on, is going to be a key factor here for this WVU team. Like Keenan said, they can go big, they can go small. They have some bigger guys who can shoot well. And looking back to last year, it never felt like they had that true 5 that could dominate down low. Eduardo Andre put up some great minutes coming off the bench, and Amani Hansberry got some good minutes down low too. But a lot of the times, especially as shooters got hurt and you had players who couldn't play, they needed him to be more of a stretch 5 and put him out wide so he could make shots. I don't think you're going to need that this year as much, when it comes to taking height out of the post and putting it out into the 3-point range. So looking at this year, I mean, WVU last year got out-rebounded in the vast majority of their Big 12 games. I want to say it was 17, but I know I wrote that somewhere, but I can't find it right now. And they lost the vast majority of those games because you just have to have height in the Big 12 and you have to be able to rebound. And that's a large part of why I feel personally that this year's team is much better suited to take on the Big 12 than they have been last year.
I agree, and much of that coming from I feel like we're deep, a little bit deeper than we were last season, considering the fact that we only had Tucker DeVries for only 8-9 games, and then we only had Javon Small who literally had to take over for us, and talking about that, now obviously for our 2 primary scorers, obviously we have Honor Huff and Trace and Eaglestaff. Our 3rd primary scorer, this was kind of a question I wanted to bring up. Like, who do you think is going to be our 3rd primary? 3rd primary for me personally, I'm going to say it's going to be either Jasper Floyd or Laurent. Either of those guys are very athletic. I mean, Laurent obviously is very athletic. He's very dominant. As we mentioned in the press conference after the Wheeling game, that was his first ever start in college. So him making that transition early is definitely going to be that's a very big plus, a big positive on his side. I feel like that'll help his confidence level. And Jasper Floyd, obviously, like both these guys came from North Texas. They know the Ross Hodge system. They've been in that system. So, and obviously you already know Floyd's going to be most likely taking the point guard duties since mostly Honor Huff's going to be taking the 2 spot because he's going to be doing most of the shooting. So, but yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be either Floyd or Laurent as my 2 other primary scores other than Huff and Eaglestaff.
Yeah, I like what Floyd brings to the table too, but I think he's kind of a guy where he's fine with whatever he does. He just wants to run the team and kind of get them to what they need to be and kind of what they need to do. The way I look at it is I agree with what you said. I think it's Lorient. There's a lot of meat on the bone there. Like there's a lot of more things that he can do. He talked about being a 3-and-D player, and obviously he can rebound the basketball. He's really athletic. He's that stretch four that everybody in college basketball wants. Ross Hodge kind of talked about it a little bit. When he first put his name in the portal, had a no contact tag, he would have been the guy that probably had more offers than probably anybody they recruited if he would have kind of went out and played the game. So I'm excited to really see how he develops because there's not a lot of players like him. And kind of kicking back to what I was saying earlier, it always goes into people talk about versatility a lot. Last year, West Virginia kind of got stuck. They didn't have a lot of guys that could move around. And really, most people think about that offensively. It really only matters who you can defend. So the defensive versatility here has me pretty excited for this team and athleticism that they've got.
Yeah, I think Lorient, it has to be a considerable scoring option, especially down the road. They're going to have to show a lot of different looks during non-conference play. They're going to get challenged early, especially when you take on Clemson. And then when you move into that Big 12 schedule, I'd be really curious to see how he matches up against some of the other 3s and 4s when you look across the Big 12. I think his height, at 6'9" as well, makes him, kind of a difference maker in the sense that he moves really well too. So, I like him as like a glue guy. I think he'll definitely be good finishing wise as well. I'll be curious to see how he is from beyond the arc. But I think if you have Huff and Eaglestaff kind of, primary and secondary scorers, you're not going to really have to look for a lot of options when it comes to, when you play some of those mid-major teams in the non-conference. And then really once you move into Big 12 play, that's where you're really going to want to see the creativity. So I'd be excited to see that. I'm curious to see what the potential and the outlook on Amir Jenkins' freshman season looks. I'm curious to see how he handles being the backup point guard. I know Jasper's probably going to be more of a distributor, probably more somebody who wants to disrupt on defense. So to see if he can be the scorer that he kind of was, recruited and, reclassified out to be, I think that would be something really interesting to follow too. And then just how he develops and, is able to manage playing, at a high major and, kind of making that jump from high school.
Yeah. And going off of we're talking about Jasper, he seems like the guy, and even Hodge described him as the guy that's going to control the pace. And he's going to be able to find Eaglestaff. He's going to be able to find Huff those shots, especially when they're hot. And then I also like to see him move around with Harlan. I don't believe Floyd even attempted a 3. I think all of his shots came from inside the paint. And having him in the pick and roll with Lorient and Harlan, I think is going to open up shots for him because everyone's going to have to worry about the big guys, and he's just going to be able to get to his float like he did against Wheeling. Obviously, the defense wasn't as strong, and also I just think, like I said, Harlan is going to be able to clean up the glass on all these 3s, and he also shaved however many pounds in the off season, so he's going to be able to run up and down the floor, get in transition a little bit, and play a little bit more minutes a game than he probably would have been able to starting last season. So I think he's going to have a good production putting the ball in the rim.
Yeah, so looking at, potential third scoring options, I'm going to kind of play off of Keenan here a little bit. I really like Chance Moore. I went back and I watched some of his tape. I watched some of his, transfer highlights, things like that got put out about him. And so much so that I predicted him to be a starter. I thought that, in a recent piece I wrote for WV Sports Now, I thought he was going to be kind of like that 4/3 spot. But based on the way it looks right now, looks like he's going to be coming in off the bench with Lorient starting at the 4. So, but he's just such an explosive player. I love what he brings to the table on defense, on offense. I mean, he's a guy who averaged 6.5 rebounds last year for St. Bonaventure, 13 points, 1.3 steals per game. I mean, he is a prime player who's going to fit so well into this Ross Hodge system as a defensive guy, a guy who can make plays from anywhere in the half court on offense. I think he'll be a name to watch as one of those guys who kind of takes the team by storm alongside Huff and Eaglestaff.
Yeah, he's my favorite type of player just because he He just gets downhill. He gets to the rim. He
Oh, yeah.
knows his role, rebounds the basketball, plays defense.
Yep.
Like he's kind of my, I guess, glue guy on this team. I think that
Mhm.
they're going to miss him for the first 5 games, definitely.
For sure.
Absolutely. And, just to say that, I got to see him in practice a few times. He's definitely the most versatile player on that team. I can just say that. I can say that because he's very versatile. Like I said, very athletic. Probably the best defensive guy on that team, other than Lorient, in my opinion. So, and not to mention, he did give us buckets a few years ago while he was at Missouri State and Josh Eiler's first year. But yeah, what about Jagger? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think I think you all had really good points. I think other than Honor and Trayson, there's 2 or 3 guys that come to my mind that I'm anxious to see what they can do, and those guys are Bilo, Amir, and Chance Moore when he becomes available. Because we haven't seen him play yet. We've seen everyone else play at least once, but I think those 3 guys alone can give you scoring, rebounding, defense. I mean, Amir's reclassed, and I think he's going to play a huge role in this team, and I'm anxious to see what he's able to do this year.
Absolutely, and I got to see Amir play back in July in the Adidas 3SSB Nationals up in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I mean, he felt, in my personal opinion, he looked like the best point guard throughout that whole tournament. I mean, as soon as I watched this kid, I was like, okay, there's a reason why he's reclassifying back to the 25, because this kid's ready. So, give him the opportunity to play for the Mountaineers early and kind of give him that confidence level is going to be really good. And personally for me, I think DJ Thomas is also going to help out with his length and size as a freshman. I think that'll definitely help out with this Mountaineer defense in terms of like post presence and all that, just to give him just like another added big to the table. So that definitely helps out a lot. So obviously let's move on to this. This is going to be a question here. Toughest non-conference opponent and toughest conference opponent. Personally, for me, toughest non-conference opponent is probably going to be Ohio State, December 13th in Cleveland. Obviously, they got Bruce Thornton and John Mobley back. They're one of the best backcourts in the country. And then, obviously, for toughest conference opponent, obviously, you got to go up against defending national runners-up in the Houston Cougars. Definitely going to be going up against BYU. Probably like our toughest home conference is most likely going to be either BYU or Texas Tech, because obviously, as I've mentioned this before we even started here, AJ DeBonsa and obviously Darren Peterson, we got 2 lottery picks that are going to be playing at the Coliseum this year, so that's definitely going to be worth your money spending if you guys are going to be spending tickets on a Mountaineer game. So going to see 2 lottery picks playing at the Coliseum, at the Hope Coliseum this year. So and then obviously just like the Big 12 obviously is a big conference. It's like one of the best conferences in America. That's my personal opinion on that. So but your guys' thoughts on the non-conference opponents and conference opponents for this year?
Well, for me, for the out of conference, I would probably go with Clemson. I don't really know necessarily too much about who's returning, who's coming in, but that's a team that's been very strong in the ACC, which has been like they've had a good couple years in the ACC, and I just think out of conference, I believe is that a tournament game? One of those tournament games, one of those neutral sites.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be one of those games that's going to be back and forth. Both of these teams know that they have a tough schedule ahead of themselves. So getting this win against a Big 12 team or an ACC win definitely shows come March that they could compete with other conferences also within their conference.
I don't know if it's the hardest. Oh, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Pitt, honestly, is probably
That's what I was going to say.
non-conference matchup just because it's Pitt. Like
the low-hanging fruit there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, you have – this is the, 4th different, head coach in 4 seasons. I think what's really kind of difficult to convey is like a rivalry when you really don't have any skin in the game. And I think it kind of ties into a larger issue, but especially in football as well, when you don't have that continuity of players and sort of hatred. I think that it's so hard for these players to really get invested into it. And with it being at the Hope Coliseum this year, I think that if they lose that game, it'll be similar to last season in that when they lost by 20 points on the road, you had this really nice resume after non-con, but it kept coming back to you lost by 20 points to Pitt. And so I think that's a game that's almost a must-win early because you have to kind of set that tone. I mean, I believe it's November 13th, so it's going to be really early in the season. And then in Big 12 play, who's going to be harder to play than Houston or maybe Kansas this year? I mean, when you have teams that are vying for national championships and that are very well coached, especially against a first-year head coach, it's pretty. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's definitely a lot different than playing in the AAC when you're going up against powers who really you had a couple of plays away for Samson to have his first national championship. So I think those are going to be teams that are reloaded and looking to kind of go through the Big 12 conference and just try to make their way, position their way best, for a one or two seed. So I'm really looking forward to those games, especially.
Yeah, I don't know if Pitt is the toughest, but it's definitely the most important for West Virginia. Just from a general consensus from the fan base, you can win that one and maybe not win a few, but you lose that one, things start. It's not a good way to start, and I think everybody understands that. And yeah, in the league, you can go up and down and pick teams, but to me, I agree with pretty much what was said. It's Houston. It's Houston until it's not Houston, which is weird because I'd said Kansas for 10 years, but Houston has just been dominant, and they return a lot, and they're just so good defensively. I mean, they make you earn everything, and it's just that's the one game that when I cover West Virginia, I'm just like, man, that is everything is hard. Everything is hard. So that's going to be another tough one.
Yeah, I do hate to just kind of keep that trend going, but it is hard to say anybody other than Houston, just with the type of teams that Kelvin Sampson has been able to put out there year in and year out, and especially playing it in Houston, that doesn't make things any easier for this team. But also to play off of the Pitt game, I mean, I think that's going to be one of their tougher games because I think it is their earliest challenge. It's the first P4 team they're going to play all year, and they'll have a few more games in there to prepare for the Charleston Invitational that they'll be playing, or the Charleston Classic. But to have that type of team come into Morgantown, they have some returning players, a lot of their production's coming back still, and you're going to see an established team who hates you, even if you don't, like Bryce said, even if you don't really understand why. But given that a lot of the all of these players for WVU are new, so that's going to be something to try to look out for, is how does Ross Hodge kind of foster that intensity for this team. I'd have to imagine he probably took the team to the backyard brawl this year and got some good looks at that atmosphere. But I mean, can you imagine how enraged WVU fans of football would be right now if they had lost that Pitt game? I mean, I think ever since the backyard brawl, it's kind of been smooth sailing. You just kind of give them a free year as long as they win that game. At least that's what it feels like from a fan perspective.
Mhm.
But I think this Pitt game early on, it's going to be really fun to see how they respond to a challenge like that. And I think it's good for them that they get it on the home court in Morgantown.
Not to mention they got to do it without Chance Moore too in that one.
That's true.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
true.
that'll be a big challenge.
Yeah, and I'm going to say exactly what everyone else said about toughest Big 12 opponent, but I'm going to say Houston until it's not Houston. I personally think they're the best team in the country, and I think, no disrespect to Florida, but they should have won the title last year, and I think this will be their year that they finally win it. And for toughest non-con, I'm going to say either Ohio State or Pitt, and like you guys said, just Pitt's an early challenge. It's a rivalry. It's a way to see how Coach Hodge gets this rivalry and what he knows about it and what he understands, and I think it's a huge tone setter to start the year off. And if we can beat them, that's huge to start the year. Like you guys said about the football game, if it's kind of like a free year, we beat Pitt. So as long as we beat Pitt, that's all that really matters. But I think it's kind of the same way in basketball. But I think, and then Ohio State, it's a neutral site. They return guys. They're one of the best teams in the Big Ten, and that's also a big tone setter.
Yeah, and I think I've also forgot to mention the Wake Forest game as well at the Charleston Coliseum. I think that'll be a pretty big challenge as well in the non-con, just because Wake Forest, it's Steve Forbes. He's one of the best coaches in the ACC. I mean, one of the underrated teams in the ACC is Wake Forest. I've seen a couple of the players that they've brought in. They got Cooper Schweiger from Valpo and Miles Cloven from Purdue, who came in from that, obviously from that Purdue team. So. I think that'll bring a big challenge for West Virginia as well. So, but lastly here, I'll have you guys answer this, and then I'll have my say in this one. Do you think that this 2025-26 West Virginia men's basketball team is an NCAA tournament contender?
Are we using the same selection committee as last year? Because that's going to be tough, but it's so hard to say right now. And I do think that they're going to have a chance. But to me, it comes down to this for this team in the NCAA tournament. They need to take care of the non-conference. I know that's obvious, but they need to beat all the teams they're supposed to beat. You can't lose any of those games. You need to beat those teams. You need to still maybe one or two you might not be favored. And then in the Big 12, you don't necessarily have to. You want to beat the Houstons, the Kansases, the BYUs, but you need to beat the Utahs, the Cincinnatis, the Kansas States. Those two teams the three teams that they play twice, UCF, Kansas State, and Cincinnati. You need to find a way to win 4 or 5 of those games because this league is a grinder. And Ross Hodge can put a really good basketball team on the floor and still struggle in year one in this league because it's just the nature of the beast. So that's what it comes down to me. What I need to see more before I feel confident saying they're going to go to the tournament. And a lot of it depends on other factors. Who do they beat? Where are they at in the net? How are other teams doing that are around them? But I would say I'm going to optimistically, because, we need some optimism. I'm going to say yes as of today, but a guarded yes, because there's a lot left here, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of adding on to that, I look back to last year because, I've only covered the team now for just my 3rd season. My frame of reference is last season they had as best as non-con as you could really have. And you walked out of that, especially after the Kansas opener, and you said, how is this not an NCAA tournament team? And obviously down the stretch, they had games where they dropped that they probably should have won. They weren't as healthy as they could have been. And then they completely just lost it in the second half of their opening Big 12 tournament game. And eventually, we saw the disappointing news for, it was kind of like, when are they going to show West Virginia on the screen? It's just not a lot of opportunities now. I think that this team certainly can be an NCAA tournament team, but it really does boil down to just handling the non-conference and like steadily doing it. Because if they struggle early and you go into Big 12 play limping, you have the Big 12 opening game against Iowa State. I feel like if you go 500 in Big 12 play and didn't handle your non-con, you're going to be looking from the outside in. So I think it really does boil down to how do you feel after non-conference? How do you feel after you get Chance Moore back? Did you beat Pitt? Did you lose to Pitt? These are all factors you got to weigh into it. And, I don't see a world in where they go into Houston and beat Houston on the road. But then again, the last season going into it, obviously a different regime. I didn't expect them to beat Kansas. I certainly didn't expect them to, beat Gonzaga. Just certain games where if they're able to steal a few, this certainly could be in a position where if they have the right players healthy, they could definitely sneak into the tournament.
Yeah, and it really is just handling, like Keenan, Bright, like all you guys said, it's just handling the games that you need to win, and it's also handling business at home. You can't drop home games, especially in Big 12, especially out of conference home games. That wouldn't be great. I don't know necessarily how tough the teams that are coming to the Coliseum will be, but those are games where you're going to have to win, and to get in the tournament playing in the Big 12, those are games that you might have to go cover instead of just win. So I'm just curious. Like we said, it's early in the season. I'm optimistic. This is my last year here. I really hope to see a little tournament run. So I really need to see that from the guys. And I also like too how Hodge is more like a defensive coach too, which I think will help in that aspect of keeping teams scoring limited. so it could show that even if our shooting isn't there that night, we still have a chance to get a victory just because we're going to play some hard-nosed defense and stick in the game, be pest on the ball.
Yeah, I think, I've leaned yes for a good bit. The more that Hodge brought in talent, just top tier talent, guys that P4 teams wanted, the more I've been optimistic in this team's potential. And I said it earlier, I think they have a much higher ceiling than last year. So I think, there are some, questions to be had whether or not a lot of their game translates into the P4 level, particularly the guys down low. The physical guys inside in the Big 12 are way more complete and way just bigger and faster and stronger than the guys at those G6 levels. But to kind of take the words of Ross Hodge here, shooting translates to all level of basketball, and that's what you're bringing in with Honor Huff, Trayson Eagle staff, some with Chance Moore, and some other players. Jackson Fields is one who comes to mind whenever he's available for this team. So I think that if these players, and obviously this isn't going to be a consistent night in night out thing, if all of these players can play to their potential within this team and within their roles, I think WVU has a chance to not only make the tournament, but go on a run there. I think that there's real talent on this roster. And, people agree. I think they had a really high rated recruiting class based on this year. They flipped Trayson Eagle staff from USC. After the year the SEC just had, to flip a player from the SEC is a huge deal. So I think that, and they're still figuring this out. That was very clear from the exhibition game. It might take some time, but you have a few games at the beginning before you get into Pitt. You have three G6 games at the Coliseum before you have to go against Pitt. You have a little bit more time to figure this out. I think as the season goes on and players start to settle into their roles, I think WVU could be dangerous come Big 12 play.
And one more thing I'd like to add too is it seems like from all the press conferences and whatnot, this roster is hungry. A lot of these guys come to this school, come to Big 12 to prove, obviously they want to win games, but they also want to prove to the league, the NBA, that they could compete in that league. They could find a job there, make a living in the NBA. And you see how Javon Small was last year. He comes in and was a all-conference, honorable mention All-American, and because he was hungry, because he wanted to prove to the world that he could carry a team and evidently see where he's at now in the league, and he's playing. And I think that's what this roster is. Like Jasper Floyd, that comes to mind. He talks about it. He said the NBA evaluates point guards based on winning games. So he's not looking to pad his stats. He's looking to win as many games as he can. So that's what I think separates this roster maybe from last year a little bit. If you think of some of the way that makeup was, these guys are hungry to prove to the world that they can compete.
Yeah, and I'm really 50-50 on whether or not this is a tournament team, because we play Power 4 teams at neutral sites. And, in the Big 12, you start off the Big 12 season, you go to Iowa State, you play at Arizona, play at Houston, and even though you have like BYU, Texas Tech, Kansas at home, those are all tough games. I mean, I don't think there's any easy Big 12 game. And I think last year's team really did get snubbed from the tournament, and I think a lot of people realize that. But I think this team, I do think that they can make the tournament. I think they have the talent and the guys that can do it. I just don't know if it's all going to gel together in year one. But I think, what we have with Ross Hodge is something to look forward to in the future. And I think that he can really get us in the right spot and the right direction.
And go back with what Nick was saying here, talk about how this roster is hungry. He's right. I've been at the practices. Ross Hodge has been he wants a national championship here in Morgantown. And I think overachieving in year one will definitely help this Mountaineer team in the future. And obviously, I don't really want to talk about long term. Obviously, with talking about like what we're getting right now from because obviously Ross Hodge has done very successfully right now at the high school recruiting level already getting like a top center, and then obviously getting Kingston Woody from high school, and then now getting a 5-star. Getting a 5-star to cut his list to 6 schools, and West Virginia being one of those schools. And West Virginia never really gets like any 5-star talent. The only other 5-star talent that WVU got was Oscar Shibwe. And just thinking about that already, to seeing what Ross Hodge is already starting to build is something that is very incredible for someone who hasn't even started like an official game as at WVU. So I'm very confident about this team moving on to this year. I won't really go any specifics on games since we already went through them, but yeah, I'm going to say yes. As of right now, yes. For right now, this WVU basketball team looks like a bubble team, in my opinion. As of right now, it's kind of too early to say. But for right now, with the right pieces, with the right coaching staff, with the right mindset, I think this team will go far, if not more, in 2025-26. But yeah, I think that's going to do it. I think we're already past the half hour. That was what we were going to try to bring up. So I want to thank each and every one of our guys here for coming on to the pod. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to come to this podcast. And I'm really looking forward to covering the Mountaineers with you guys this season.
Sounds good, brother.
Thanks, Ollie, bro. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Anytime. If you guys make sure you guys go like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, if you guys are listening to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, make sure you guys go give us a like and review as well. Hope to give you guys more WVU and other high school basketball content as well here in the next coming days. So it's coming. Year 1 is coming, man. And stay safe, y'all, and have a wonderful night.